students have read it. What was the reason for why one of your teachers had a breakdown during class? I have a story for this one. A few years ago I took a class in design theory. It was the pet project of the head of the college, and taught the design principles behind everything from common household objects, to room layouts to entire organizations. It was an absolutely brutal class, but uniquely informative. One day, towards the end of the semester, we went over the use of humor in design. The professor spent the entire class talking about how laughter and amusement can be used to engage an audience and change how people see a situation. The whole time, he was laughing, cracking jokes, and good ones too, and generally making sure the class had a good time. And at the end of the lesson, he told us not to underestimate the power of laughter after all. It was how he had gotten through the lecture that day. His father had died a couple days prior. He broke down crying after he told us. It's probably the most impactful lecture I've ever attended. The teacher was bullied and disrespected every day. One day an idiot threw a geometry compass, and it got stuck on a corkboard, like when you do knife throwing, right beside her, while she was writing on the board. Instant meltdown. In tears, she left the class and I never saw her again. Can't blame her. She probably thought her life was in danger at this point. Some schools/neighborhoods are very hard. Grade 10 science class. We were taking turns using some kind of lung capacity measuring device. Breathe into a tube and a small plastic bowl gets raised by the force of your breathing. Something gets measured somehow. I can't really remember details aside from the plastic bowl. Anyway, the teacher takes his turn, apparently trying to show off with how hard he can breathe out, somehow breaks the measuring device. The teacher goes into a rage. After realizing he broke it, briefly tries to fix it, gives up, picks up a metal garbage can, and throws it in anger, storms out of the room, and doesn't come back for 10 to 15 minutes, at which point he returns, and acts like nothing happened. It was more bizarre and amusing than anything else. The teacher learned that one student cheated on a history essay. After getting this kid suspended for 2 days, repeat offender, she discovered that almost 2/3 of her class in that subject was cheating as well. I don't know what happened after that, but she literally broke down when she found out that my class knew about it. We were in a different subject, so we weren't a part of this scandal. This teacher always seemed tough as nails, so it was a shock when a kid just said she looked like a pit bull. She did have jowls, and she left crying. My math teacher in 8th grade was extremely pregnant and our exchange student from Brazil called her beautiful. She broke down in tears and admitted she didn't feel very pretty. She was a substitute teacher at elementary school, and at some point a kid took it too far and threw a bottle at her. It was an empty plastic bottle, but still. Teacher hit and killed a student walking on their way to school. My favorite science teacher in high school was slowly being forced out by administration. One day in class she stopped teaching and sat down in front of us and told us she had just been diagnosed with manuscript and began sobbing. The entire class got up and gave her a long group hug. It is one of my most cherished memories from that chapter of my life. We made our English teacher cry, but we didn't want to because we really liked her. She was about to switch to another school, and she had some really important things to do. She needed to call someone, so she gave us a task to do, and left the room for like 5 minutes. We were a horrible class, around 16/17 at this time, and mainly boys. We had breakfast together that day and stuff was still in the classroom. So the boys decided it was time to throw it around and hit the window with sticker butter. While one boy tried to clean the window using a squeegee. Is that the right word? Never used it before, and I'm not native. Someone else decided to throw out the trash. Another teacher came because she saw the trash flying by the window of her classroom, and in the moment she started yelling at us. The other teacher came back. She immediately started crying as she saw what was going on. I think she was angry and overwhelmed because she liked the school and didn't want to leave, but in this moment we were the little assholes making the decision easier. But the next week, she came into the class and had written a small poem for us about being too old to throw around trash and playing with butter. Physics teacher came into class late. walked past the podium, and walked into the chalkboard. Like, he would have kept walking if it wasn't there. He then picked up one of those plastic pen things that you put chalk in. Proceeded to try and write on the chalkboard, even though the pen was empty of chalk, all the while mumbling incoherently. Found out later he had a stroke and managed to drive himself to the university. Edit. He didn't return to teaching that year, and as best I recall he ended up retiring due to health complications. He was in his 60s, and along with the stroke he had fallen and hit his head. Online searching shows he passed away about 8 years later. My 8th grade Spanish teacher and the freshman baseball coach were having an affair. It eventually became public knowledge, and she had several breakdowns as her divorce played out over course of my 8th grade year. My university physics professor got the call that his dog had died right before a test. Needless to say, we didn't have a test that day. There was this science teacher already on the verge of a breakdown. We called her Molecule. Someone wrote that on a leaf of one of the plants in the class and she started crying and pretty much had a breakdown. One time in math class the emo girl was not having it. I don't even remember how it got started, but she ended up bickering with the teacher and the emo girl called the teacher Thundertits. It was at this point that the emo girl was sent to the office and the teacher had to take a seat at her desk in the back for a few minutes. My JH biology teacher legit used to have weird ass flashbacks of when he fought at Vietnam. S***T was pretty sad to see. The one that sticks out is my history teacher, who was a level 10 incompetent at anything. She usually blathered on through class about stupid things. She was always very well put together, dressed well, hair done. It's just there was no substance to her teaching or conversational topics. One day, she started talking about a coworker she was very close to when she was young. Mind you, she had to be approaching her 60s. The story started out innocent enough where we were all basically ignoring her, and pretty soon it veered off into this terrible reality. Her coworker had gone home from work and died in a car accident on the way home. This had to have been 30 years ago. She was crying, saying how much she missed her and how crazy life can be. The way she explained the story was so sad too. They had made plans the following day, and my teacher was excitedly waiting for that coworker to come in. I disliked that teacher immensely, but I felt so sorry for her. She stood there, crying because her friend was gone. I don't think at 15 I could imagine that sort of loneliness or pain. But now, a good 15 years later I've had her experiences, and I sympathize with her. My history/government teacher has been to Vietnam and it's quite known that he was on the front lines. So in the middle of a lecture a girl raised her hand and asked, "Have you ever killed someone?" The question caused him to go silent and leave the room for quite a while. Luckily the girl was ripped a new asshole by her fellow classmates. My best friend caused the school librarian to lose it because she thought she caught him masturbating in the non-fiction section. Edit. For clarification, the librarian accused my friend of masturbating in said section of the school library. He has denied all allegations and refuses to answer any more questions on the matter. Not my teacher, but my younger sisters at the time. The class was making fun of her recent miscarriage and her mum dying of cancer. My math professor in college was going through a divorce and they were fighting for custody of their 2 younger children. You can tell he was irritated because he wore his emotions on his sleeve. One day he came into class about 5 minutes late and he was physically shaking. He was violently crying and apologized to us and said the class was cancelled. He apparently lost the custody fight with his ex-wife. A ref **KTARD said head piss on the teacher's grandpa's grave. Reading through these comments I will never understand how some kids can be such pricks. He was showing us a diagram of a baby in the womb when it started off as an egg and the diagram was spinning around and we kept asking if the baby spins out for 9 months and does it get dizzy etc. I can provide a more positive breakdown from years ago. English teacher realized 5 minutes into the discussion of a book that only a few people had done the assigned reading, and he put his book on a table and went on a tear about how you can't just go through life assuming that other people will pick up your slack and that it's important to value your education and not just bulls**t your way through classes. Some guy came in late and started talking to his friends. The teacher chimed in with something like, "If you're gonna be late, you might as well not show up at all." So he said fine B***ch and left. She stared blankly at the door for a good 30 seconds and then yelled at everyone else in the class for what one, now absent, student did. I distinctly remember her claiming at one point that everyone in this room is failing this class. Two girls were chatting during math class while one did the other's hair. My math teacher couldn't take it, got a meter stick and slammed it on the one girl's desk yelling no hairdressing. We were all shocked. It was odd. Joke's on him, she became a hairdresser. Well, call him Mr. Jiggles. Of course, that's not his real name. It's not anyone's real name, but it's fitting enough, as he was a rather large fella. A nice man all the same, just rotund. Now I heard he was on PCP, I heard he was infected by devils, I heard all manner of rumors, but from the mouth of Mr. Jiggles, none of that was true. See, one day in the middle of class he just stopped giving a lecture and somehow became stricken with the idea that he was Jesus. I'm actually not making this up. It does sound like bulls**t even writing this, but I assure you it happened. 1998 was the year, to be exact. He left the classroom and stood in the hallway waiting for class change and then picked students to bless. He'd walk up, bless a student, and then walk away, all the while preaching loudly that he was the coming of Christ. I'm not sure if it was a second coming in his mind. Who knows? Maybe it was the first. That was unclear. But one of the students wasn't receptive to his blessing and swatted at Mr. Jiggles' hand. Mistake. Mr. Jiggles grabbed him by the throat and dragged him down the hallway, promising to personally carry him into hell. He actually just carried him into a biology teacher's classroom. She tried to talk him down, but it wasn't working. The police and EMS arrived quickly enough. No one was hurt. Now I think everyone assumed Mr. Jiggles was fired, but the next year he was back. Everyone had a version of the story and a theory for why it happened. Some say his wife was cheating on him. Others said it was some drug-induced psychosis. But one day at lunch we were talking about something unrelated, and I just asked him point blank what happened. The answer? He was on some kind of psych meds, had run out, and forgot to refill them before hitting empty. His pharmacy was out of that particular medicine, told him it would be 5 days before they got it in, and he thought he'd be fine for that 5 days. He was mistaken. The 9th of November 2003. We were in first period, and we had a moment of silence in remembrance at the time that the first plane hit the tower. I think it was a Channel 1 thing. The teacher broke down. She was panting, pulling her hair, and began mumbling to herself. The mumbling became louder, and she started to pace. Finally she walked over to a coffee pot that was in the room, and picked up a large Ziploc bag of ground coffee, while screaming, "I wish this was Coke, I need it right now." She then fell against the wall and slid down. We let her go for a minimum or two before a few of my friends and I went over and helped her up and walked her to the front office. We got the best long-term sub ever after that, a true influence I'd only seen a few times in all of my schooling. Edit. I was a senior in high school. Although on the East Coast, we were not close to New York, and to my knowledge the teacher had no connections with anyone from New York. I feel legitimately bad about causing this one. Junior year of high school, my lit teacher was from Wisconsin and had a very thick Midwestern accent. This was in the South, so a number of her intonations were very noticeable. In particular, words with an ag syllable stuck out. Egg. Bag would be pronounced like a mixture of bay and egg. She was reading a passage from Beowulf to the class one day, and to paraphrase the modern English translation, came across the following sentence: Beowulf killed the dragon with a dagger. It was too many Midwestern syllables too close together for my friend and I to handle tactfully in our 16-year-old mincits, and involuntarily, we laughed. Upon attempting to cover it up, it probably sounded more like a snicker, and she did not take it well. I wish I could say that she scolded us, but it was so much worse than that. She shut the book, looked at the floor and straight up cried for what must have been 45 seconds, but felt like an entire 45 minutes. Dejected, breathless sobs. Once she had recovered from this, she picked it back up where she left off, like it hadn't happened. Even though, generally speaking, I really disliked that teacher, it sucked knowing that our immature reaction caused her to feel ridiculed. We didn't have malicious intent, but the result was the same, and we of course apologized to her privately after the fact. Couple of students were arguing across the classroom. One of them thought he'd be clever and tell the other to go and hang yourself. Teacher ran out of the room crying, came back in 5 minutes later screaming at him that her dad had hung himself, called him a horrible boy, etc. She king quit. Asterisk like. Asterisk that week. Asterisk everyone kind of jumped him after class. Perhaps a bit far, but I think somewhat deserved. Edit. Okay, clearly jumped was the wrong choice of words here, as a lot of you seem to think he got beat up. He didn't get beaten up. He got surrounded by a group of guys his age, mostly friends of his, and got verbally berated for being a little t and upsetting the teacher like that. He took a punch to the arm or two, maybe a kick to the calf, but it wasn't anything serious. It was unmistakably the moment that his peers told him that he was out of line. Nobody attacked him. I wrote a paper about a difficult life experience I had growing up, and it made her sob. I just wrote about my sister on the day she died, and how I felt a few months after that. When my mom came in for a talk about my grades, they talked about loss, and cried for a while. Wasn't a teacher, but we had a toothless bus driver. Kids were king with him, so he'd drive the bus back to school. When he left the bus, someone wedged a trash can in the door, so it couldn't open. A toothless man eventually got back in the bus and was screaming, etc. I felt sorry for him. Sorry Dewey. 7th grade, my teacher had suffered a tragic infant loss at birth. She was delivering her first baby, several failed rounds of IVF and 3 miscarriages. Now finally, a baby boy. She was so excited. She got pregnant at the beginning of the school year, so she could have her maternity leave over summer break. Perfect. She went into early labor, 6 weeks early. Baby boy is born limp and blue, cord around neck. APGAR basically at 0. He is revived, only to die on pneumonia at 3 days old. They never got to hold him while he lived because of multiple treatments and surgeries and the illness, and her recovery from emergency C-section. She comes back from break and it's obvious she's still very much affected. Not her usual self at all, not to be unexpected, due to her tragic loss. This one kid, Forrest, is being an absolute jerk, making annoying noises, throwing things, running commentary. Teacher asks him nicely to settle down 3 times. He persists. Finally she loses her temper and tells him to sit down and **t up or be written up. Forrest responds with, maybe if you weren't such a ***ch your baby wouldn't have died. Must suck to know you're such an awful person your own infant killed itself to escape you. Teacher goes blank and starts shaking. She just broke down. These horrible harsh sobs. You could practically see her agony as those tears flowed, and her body racked so hard I thought she might break in half. She went to the office, and we had a sub for the rest of the semester. Teacher ended taking the entire year off to recover, and then transferred to a new district. And Forrest remains an asshole to this day. But now he is a police officer. So an asshole with power and a gun. Great. One time my professor came in real freaking high. Like eyes red, laughing all the time and all. He was going through a divorce. We all loved the guy because he treats us with respect and genuinely loves to teach, so we didn't care and just let him be. My teacher spent 15 minutes trying to figure out how to turn the volume up for a video. An IT teacher, mind you, someone who teaches in technology, didn't know how to turn the volume up. When she finally figured it out, the whole class applauded and she broke down and left the room. Admittedly this makes us students look bad, but she was an awful teacher who clearly had no clue about anything in the subject. We didn't like her, so we let her figure it out herself. My social studies teacher back in middle school. He was new, taking over for another teacher who mysteriously retired halfway through the year. The kids just went nuts with acting out for whatever reason, and during one class everyone was being so unruly that he looked like he was going to snap. He had no control. He left for a minute to cool down and came back to find that a bunch of idiots were now sitting *UPSIDEDOWN* in the chairs, and Snappy did the worst part. In rage, he tried throwing something as hard as he could at the wall. Unfortunately, all he had in his hand currently was a tissue. Despite all the force of his crazed pitch, the tissue just kinda fluttered for about a foot. I will never forget the look of impotent rage that swallowed up his face. I think that was when he left the room. Of course he stuck it out and become one of the best and most influential teachers of my life, so it all turned out okay. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.